Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I appreciate everyone coming a little earlier today with the change in time. I thought maybe we would have one or two people, but we have a few. That's good. I'm going to give a talk today about a few different things, trying to pull a few ideas together. First, we are now a few weeks into the year of the fire horse. So I'm going to be talking a little bit more about Huayan Buddhism and its connection to neuroscience in a way. I'm going to say that both Huayan Buddhism and neuroscience penetrate beneath the appearance to reveal the underlying structures, underlying principles. So this is a full body view of the anatomy of Buddhism in a way. We have in the center, we have the mountain that the Buddha brought to us, the Tipitaka, the three canons, and the suttas and the Vinaya and the Abhidhamma. And there's an eightfold path that we take to ascend to this mountain. And in addition to that, as time went on, there were other mountains that also we became aware of. After the second council, the Sarvastivadin mountain that in Gandhara, with the Abhidharma base camp. And that eventually evolved into Yogacara. And on the other side, Madhyamaka, the emptiness, 7 to 12 links of the interdependent origination that eventually also was, we know that Theravada Buddhism also happened, not so necessarily so connected to Madhyamaka, but there we have all of these. And then when this came to China, in Mahayana Buddhism, we have different mountains that we can say that evolved in the starting with the Prajnaparamita mountain. This is the wisdom base camp, emptiness. And then Yogacara, consciousness only base. I'm leaving Huayan for last. Tathagata Garbha, mind only base camp, suchness base camp. And then the Chan Mountain meditation base camp and Huayan Buddhism. I have in the center here, interconnectedness base camp. Each one of the schools, they have their own sequence of what the most important teachings are. And of course, each of the school put their teaching front and center. So when we penetrate into Huayan Buddhism, we recognize that Huayan Buddhism comes from a particular sutra called the Avatamsaka Sutra, that translated into Chinese as the Huayan Jing, the flower adornment or flower ornament sutra. And then the third of the great masters of the Huayan school, Master Fazang, he wrote many texts, and one of these talks that he gave was on the metaphor of the golden lion. He never wrote it down. Talk about that in a minute. And eventually, in the Song Dynasty, Master Xiǎnkuān, he wrote a summary of this principles of the metaphor of the golden lion. And one of those principles, number 7, of the 10 principles was called organizing or reining in, Le, the 10 mysterious gates. This is another character, Le, not to be confused by the character Le for happiness. If you see Lula the cat, happy, happy, not reining in. If we penetrate into the brain layers, we know that there are 6 layers in the cortex, and then internal to that is the diencephalon region. Inside of that is the thalamus, and inside of that is the habenula. Habenula in Latin means to rein in or reins. So we have a similar term here, and I'll make the connection, I hope, in the next few minutes. So originally, Le is composed of the radical for leather on one side and strength on the other, strong leather. We need that to control the horse. And from that image, we realize that this word means to restrain or to regulate, organize, or hold together. So I spoke about how there were these principles, the 10 principles that Fazang was also interested in, besides before they became part of the principles of Master Yuan in the Song Dynasty. And these 10 principles, I'm not going to go through all of them, but these were the principles that were used to help us understand how everything is interconnected and that this interconnection could happen without obstruction. This is a very important principle that somehow or other gets lost. And we forget how we are all interconnected and how we can all get along without obstructing each other. So this is an important time for us to remember and to bring back these important principles. So the golden lion is a metaphor that was used by Master Fazang to try to explain how all things are interconnected and could get along. This is actually a photograph of a food dog that I have had in my house for over 40 years. My children used to talk to this dog when they were children, Fufu. And he was made out of bronze resin, not solid bronze. And so when I was going to do this study of the golden lion, my office manager, she's very good at art, and she spray painted Fufu gold. They didn't have lions indigenous to China. Lions were just pretty much just heard of. Maybe they saw a few along the Silk Road, but of course they knew about lions, and the Buddha was actually, one of his names was a lion, or that he said the lion's roar. So when they thought of a lion, they didn't really know what it looked like, so they put a mane on a dog. So the original story of the golden lion metaphor is that Master Fazang was visiting the Daming Palace in Chang'an. Chang'an is the early name of the city of Xi'an, where they had the terracotta warriors. But it was also a very important translation center, and it was one of the capitals of the Tang Dynasty. So the Empress Wu at that time was living there. And he was maybe going there to lecture, we don't know. And there in the courtyard, he encountered Empress Wu, who was very interested in Buddhism. And he was actually, Master Fazang was a teacher that gave her instructions about Buddhism. His teacher, Master Fazang's teacher, Jian, he was the teacher of one of the children of Empress Wu. So there was a strong connection there. And she must have, we don't know for sure, but she must have asked him a question about the meaning of interconnectedness. And he pointed to a bronze gilded lion, large lion, maybe like one of our concrete lions that we have in front of Dizang Hall. And he used that as a metaphor to explain how all things are interconnected. The lion, actually, the form of the lion, there's really no lion there. It's just gold. And the gold is like a principle. So you can make gold into anything. You could make it into a statue of a horse. You could make it into gold bars. You could make it into jewelry. It's still going to be the principle of the gold. And that every part of the gold and the lion was interconnected with each other. So he gave this explanation, but he never wrote it down. But we do believe that a few years later he gave a talk on this. But again, if he wrote it down, we don't have that information. So it's likely that Master Fazang in this presentation was very brief and largely it was an intuitive kind of talk without any systematic elaboration found in the later versions, which connected it to the 10 principles. So we believe that it took place somewhere around 690 to 695. And then later in 699, he gave a talk on this. So again, we don't have a lot of information about the exact initial encounter. So I want to be very clear about this because there are many misunderstandings and people believe that they have the original Fazang dialogue, and that's just not true. In the Taisho, it's Taisho volume 1880, but that's the one that was written by Jing Yuan. So given a historical context, after Fazang's passing in 1712, another period of political and military instability emerged, culminating in the Anlushan Rebellion. And although the Tang Dynasty would survive this rebellion, many Huayan manuscripts in northern China were destroyed. But these manuscripts found their way to South Korea, at that time known as Silla and Goryeo, on the Korean Peninsula. In the Tang era, Buddhist materials were preserved with extraordinary care, especially the Huayan texts, translated, transmitted through probably Huisong lineage. Huisong was also a student of Master Jian and a good friend of Master Fazang, the person who did the Golden Lion. So Huisong, and we know that Huisong and Fazang, they had a close relationship and communicated from China to Korea after he left. For more than half a century in China, Huayan appeared to have entered a shadow period, lacking any clear institutional leadership. Well, here's another golden lion. Okay. So Jing Yuan's treatise on the golden lion emerged as a result of probably he received in the Song dynasty some of these texts that were delivered back from Silla, from Korea. He had learned about this from his teacher, who also wrote a short commentary, but not nearly as elaborate. So in Jingwan's treatise on the Golden Lion, he starts with these words: without metaphor, dharmas are not made evident. Without dharmas, metaphor does not arise. So we need to have the phenomenon, the dharma, the phenomenon, in order to be able to create the metaphor. So Jingwan, he summarized these 10 principles that were part of the Fazang's 10 gates. And Fazang built his 10 gates on the back of his teachers, Master Xian's 10 profound principles of interdependent origination, and Xian built his 10 profound principles or mysterious gates on the back of his teacher, Master Dushan's 10 gates. So Master Dushan, the original teacher of the Huayan school, he had these 10 gates that we can summarize them in these 5 sets: identity and difference, principle and phenomenon, totality and particularity, motion and stillness, and one and many. So for those people who are familiar with the 6 characteristics, you can see that there's a very strong similarity, some differences, but also some similarities between the two. Here are the 6 characteristics that find their way later into Huayan Buddhism. Totality, distinction, those go together, or particularity together. Sameness and difference, another set, and formation and disintegration. These are the characteristics of all phenomena. So Master Jian's 10 mysterious gates, as revised by Fazang in his texts. I'm not going to go through them, but you can see these are that he makes a point of being able to make sense out of the different teachings that his teacher gave. And then Fazang's, from that, he made up his 10 profound principles. And from that, Master Jing he summarized these in his version of the 10 principles. And number 7 is the one that contains this teaching of reining in the 10 mysteries. So what are we reining in? We're reining in these profound principles here. We're trying to get them so that we can ride the horse or the golden lion, whichever you prefer. So in organizing or reining in the 10 mysterious gates, the 7th principle of those 10 is a section that's quite extensive. And he's making a connection between the principle and phenomenon, between one and many, between the gold and the lion. All of these things are interconnected with each other. Well, Master Jingwan says, in the lion's eyes, ears, limbs, and joints, in each and every hair tip, there is the golden lion. The lion in each hair tip simultaneously and suddenly enters into a single hair, using all to contain all. They all enter into one. This is the gate of mutual interpenetration without obstruction. Now, when I was a young man studying cognitive science. I went to California and studied with Carl Pribram, who at that time was a preeminent neuroscientist who had a theory that the brain was holographic, so that all the parts of the brain work together to create an image of what it is that we experience, and that each part of the brain contained the whole, and the whole is contained in each part. So what does this mean to rein in? So I said before, we want to rein in the horse, we want to control our impulses. So the habenula is a part of the brain, maybe not a part of the brain that people are familiar with. It's in neuroscience, there's this part of the brain labeled the habenula that means rain, and the microstructure is a very thin strip in the central region of the epithalamus, bordering the third ventricle posterior to the pineal gland. The pineal gland, small gland in the center of the brain. It actually releases the hormone melatonin that helps us sleep. So this small structure, the venula, has certain functions. It regulates the dopamine signaling. It modulates reward and aversion. It inhibits impulse behavior. It evaluates outcomes. In short, it reins in the brain's reward system. So when we penetrate in, we can see from the outer layer going in, we get to the subennula, and here is the outside of the brain, not that colorful in real life. And here the interior part, the sliced, and we're going to go into the center portion of the brain here, where the habenula is this red strip that I kind of outlined, ending at the pineal gland, going all the way to the area called the ventral prefrontal cortex. Now, the ventral prefrontal cortex is the area that has to do with impulses, ups and downs. And when medication is used to treat bipolar disorder, it impacts the ventral prefrontal cortex, trying to calm that down. You believe that the dysregulation in bipolar disorder is related to that part of the brain. So the habenula is very important in terms of restraining that part. So here's a more anatomical picture, and I don't know if you can see the little red strip in the middle and the blue pineal gland there at the end, and how it goes all the way to the ventral prefrontal cortex. There's another picture. And here's a more detailed view of the way in which the neurocircuitry works. And this is for people who are very scientifically minded, but I'll just point out that there's an area here on called the nucleus accumbens. It's the third one down from the frontal area. And the nucleus accumbens is the reward center in the brain. It's the pleasure center, happiness center, but also very susceptible to addiction. So have to be very careful to rein that in so that the mind does not try to just do all pleasure seeking and forget all of the other very important activities that we need to do, like learning how to read and being able to do arithmetic. Yes. All the difficult stuff that we do when we're young. So it's made up of some different regions. I don't know if I want to get into all of the details of how this happens, but I think I just outlined some of the aspects of the habenula and what it does. So the habenula and the reins, in Chinese, the metaphor, the reining of the horse, the training of the mind, stabilizing our awareness. In neuroscience, the habenula is a neural rein. It regulates our impulses and modulates our motivation. So the habenula is involved in both depression and anxiety, motivation, addiction. In Chinese, the habenula rendered as a hand rope sometimes as well. So as we penetrate into Huayan Buddhism and all the way to the 10 mysterious gates, we realize I'm not going to go through all the gates, just a few of the gates that need to be regulated. The first one called simultaneous arising. The gold and the lion are established at the same time, perfectly complete and fully endowed. The lion's 6 faculties are established at the same time as the gold. This is used to illustrate that persons and dharmas, phenomenon, causes and results, essence and function are all entirely present. And they all come about at the same time. The second gate is a mutual containment. The gold and the lion mutually contain one another, establishing the unobstructedness of one and many. When the many contain the one, the 6 faculties are established. When the many contain the many, the lion has no distinctions. Within this, the principle and phenomena are each distinct. The nature of gold is a metaphor for the principle. She and the lion is the metaphor for the phenomenon, Li. The third gate, which is the last one I'll talk about today, a mutual inclusion of one and many. If the lion's eyes gather up, take in the entire lion, then everything is purely I. If the ear gathers up the entire lion, everything is purely ear. Eye and ear mutually gather each other. This is because they are purely one reality. So these are some of the teachings that are found in this Huayan that are consistent with the original teachings of the Huayan school, that there's a principle we call emptiness of the self and phenomenon. And then we have the phenomenon, which is the world of appearances. And then the principle and the phenomenon, they interpenetrate each other without obstruction. The emptiness and the form, they interconnect with each other. And not so different from the teaching of the Chan school of Prajnaparamita, the Heart Sutra. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Very similar. And the last one, which is the most interesting and intriguing, is that phenomenon and phenomenon interpenetrate without obstruction. We can all get along. We don't have to get in each other's way. We don't have to fight. We can appreciate each other's as that we are all interconnected with each other. As soon as we realize that, we will have a peaceful mind. And if everyone realizes this, then we can have a peaceful world. This is our hope, to have a peaceful mind and to be able to start with our own mind being peaceful, and then hopefully one day enough people will have the realization that peacefulness is, better than fighting. So that's the wish that I have for the year of the horse, and to make sure that we hold on to our reins. We don't let the horse get away from us. I was going to bring Master a horse, but I think he's got enough to work with. So I want to thank all of you very much for your kind attention this morning. And hopefully we can all hope for a better, peaceful world without conflict. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings never be separated from the altruistic joy which is free from suffering. And may all beings dwell in the great equanimity which is free from attachment, aversion, and ignorance. And at this time, especially aversion.